What happens when the wolf you're destined for looks at you with nothing but disgust? For Alara Ashwood, life had always meant keeping her head down. An Omega in the Silvercrest pack, the lowest rank, the weakest blood, the one everyone overlooked or pitied. She'd spent 22 years scrubbing floors in the pack house, serving meals she'd never be invited to share, and dreaming of a mate bond that might finally make her matter. The moon goddess paired souls, after all. Fate didn't care about rank. That's what she'd been taught. That's what she'd believed. But when Alpha Daemon Blackthorn stood before the entire pack at the lunar ceremony and declared her unworthy, when he looked into her eyes and severed their bond before it could even fully form, everything changed. And what happens next? No one was prepared for. Not the pack that cast her out into a winter storm to die. Not the parents who'd bound her power before she could even walk. Not the ancient warriors who'd been waiting centuries for her arrival. And certainly not Daemon himself, who would soon learn he hadn't just rejected an Omega. He'd rejected a queen. The lunar ceremony always took place on the first full moon after the winter solstice. It was tradition, sacred. A night when the moon goddess's light was said to burn brightest and reveal truths hidden in shadow. Alara had watched 17 of these ceremonies from the back of the crowd, always hoping, always wondering if this would be the year the goddess would smile on her. This year, she'd turned 22. The pull had started 3 days ago. It began as a whisper in her chest, a magnetic tug that made her wolf. Quiet. A dormant thing that she was, stir for the first time in months. Alara had tried to ignore it, tried to convince herself it meant nothing, but the scent had grown stronger with each passing hour. Forest and embers, ozone and steel. It infiltrated her dreams, made her hands shake when she folded laundry, made her heart race when she crossed the pack house corridors. She knew that scent. Everyone did. Alpha Daemon Blackthorn, architected narrative structure for romantic rejection scene. 10 seconds. Good start. I'm establishing the protagonist, Alara, the setting, lunar ceremony, and the mate bond, pulling her toward Daemon. Now I need to continue building Act 1, the setup and public rejection. I need to show the hierarchy and her low status, the ceremony itself, the moment of recognition, the brutal rejection, the physical pain, public humiliation being cast out. I need to maintain the cinematic, emotionally punchy style and weave in scent descriptions. Currently at about 350 words. Need to reach approximately 1,500 for Act 1. Impossible, she'd whispered to herself that morning, staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror of her tiny room. Pale skin, dark circles under silver-gray eyes, hair the color of wheat that she'd never learned to style properly. She looked exactly like what she was, a girl who'd spent her life in the shadows. He would never... But the bond didn't lie. The ceremony took place in the great clearing at the heart of Silvercrest territory, where ancient stones formed a circle beneath the canopy of winter bare oaks. Hundreds of wolves gathered, their breath misting in the frozen air. Alphas stood at the center, flanked by their betas. Omegas like Alara lined the outer edges, barely visible in the torchlight. The scent of anticipation hung heavy. Pine and excitement, nervousness and desire. Tonight bonds would be revealed. Mates would be claimed. The pack would witness the moon goddess's wisdom in action. Alara's hands trembled as she clutched the worn fabric of her dress. The pull in her chest had become a rope, drawing her forward, making it hard to breathe. Her wolf, silent for so long, was awake now. Aware. Desperate. Mate, the creature whispered in the back of her mind. Ours. Alpha Daemon stood at the center of the circle, magnificent in his authority. He was 28, built like a warrior carved from stone, fought with black hair and eyes the color of amber fire. He wore the traditional ceremonial robes, dark leather marked with silver runes. Power radiated from him in waves that made lesser wolves drop their gazes. He was speaking to Beta Marcus, laughing at something, completely unaware. Or perhaps he was aware and simply didn't care. Then Elder Moira stepped forward, the pack's spiritual leader, her white hair gleaming in the moonlight. "The goddess reveals what has been hidden," she intoned, her voice carrying across the clearing. "Those bound by fate, step forward and be known." The pull became a hurricane. Ilara's feet moved before her mind could stop them. She stumbled forward through the crowd, her heart hammering against her ribs. Wolves parted for her, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock. An Omega, on walking toward the center, toward the Alpha. The whisper started immediately. What is she doing? Someone stop her. Does she not know her place? But Ilara couldn't stop. The bond was a living thing now, golden threads wrapping around her heart, pulling her toward Damon with inevitable force. She could smell him so clearly now, that intoxicating mixture of forest and embers, strength and storm. It made her dizzy. It made her whole. Damon turned. Their eyes met, and the bond snapped into place. It was like lightning striking her chest. Ilara gasped, stumbling, as golden light exploded between them, visible to everyone, unmistakable, sacred. The mate mark began to form on her collarbone, a glowing symbol of two wolves intertwined beneath a crescent moon. Heat bloomed across her skin. Her wolf surged with joy. "Mate! Mate! Mate!" The clearing fell silent. Damon stared at her, his amber eyes wide with shock. For one heartbeat, two. Ilara saw something flicker across his face. Recognition, perhaps even wonder. The bond was singing between them, golden and pure, exactly as the stories promised. Then his expression hardened. No. His voice cut through the silence like a blade. Ilara's breath caught. "Alpha, no," he repeated, louder this time. He took a step back, and the movement felt like a physical blow. The scent of his emotion shifted, turned sharp and bitter. Rejection, disgust. "This is a mistake." "The bond doesn't lie," Elder Moira said softly, though there was uncertainty in her ancient eyes. "The moon goddess has chosen." "The moon goddess," Damon interrupted, his voice ringing with authority, "would not pair an alpha with an omega. This is some kind of trick, a malfunction of weak blood." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ilara felt her knees weaken. The bond was screaming in protest, tearing at her from the inside. "Damon, please," she whispered, hating how broken she sounded. "I know I'm not what you expected, but the bond means nothing." He raised his voice so everyone could hear. "I, Alpha Damon Blackthorn of the Silvercrest Pack, reject you, Ilara Ashwood, as my mate. I sever this bond in the name of the Pack's strength and my bloodline's honor." The words hit her like silver bullets. Pain exploded through her chest. Ilara screamed. She couldn't help it. As the golden threads of the bond began to burn, the mate mark on her collarbone blazed with agony, the glowing symbol twisting, breaking apart. It felt like someone was ripping her soul in half, and tearing away a piece of herself she'd only just discovered. She collapsed to her knees, gasping as the bond fought to hold on. Her wolf howled in anguish, clawing at the walls of her mind. Around her, the pack watched in horrified fascination. No one moved to help. No one dared. "Guards!" Damon's voice came from somewhere above her, cold and final. "Remove her from the ceremony. She is no longer welcome in Silvercrest territory." "But Alpha," someone protested. "Beta Marcus, perhaps. If you reject your fated mate, there could be consequences. There are no consequences for removing weakness from the pack. Damon's scent had turned to ice. She's an Omega. She has no power, no strength to offer. I will find a proper mate, one worthy of an Alpha's bond. This mistake ends tonight. Strong hands grabbed Alara's arms, hauling her upright. The guards were efficient, brutal in their indifference. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The pain was everywhere now, a white-hot fire consuming her from the inside out. As they dragged her through the crowd, she caught glimpses of faces, some pitying, some relieved. After all, if an Omega could be rejected, what did that say about the sanctity of mate bonds? Most were simply blank, already forgetting her. At the edge of the clearing, she saw her parents. Her mother, Iris, had tears streaming down her face, but she said nothing. Her father, Thomas, wouldn't even meet her eyes. They stood frozen, silent, as their daughter was dragged past them into the darkness. "Please," Alara managed to gasp. "Mother!" But Iris turned away. The guards hauled Alara to the territory's northern border, from where the wilderness began and pack protection ended. The storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke, snow beginning to fall in thick, heavy flakes. Wind howled through the trees like wounded animals. "Alpha's orders," one of the guards said, not unkindly, as they released her. "You have until dawn to leave Silvercrest lands. After that, you're rogue. We'll hunt you if we catch your scent." They left her there, at the edge of everything she'd ever known, with nothing but the thin dress she wore and the agony still ripping through her chest. The mate mark had finally gone dark, leaving behind a scar that felt like a brand. Alara stood on shaking legs, staring into the storm. Behind her, the pack. Ahead, the lethal winter wilderness. No shelter, no supplies, no chance. The bond was gone, but the pain remained, a phantom ache where something precious had been torn away. She took one step forward, then another, into the screaming wind and snow. She didn't look back. There was nothing to look back for. The last thing she heard before the storm swallowed her completely was the distant howl of celebration from the ceremony. The pack was moving on. Alpha Damon had already chosen a new female to stand beside him, Serena Nightshade, a beautiful beta with golden fur and ambition in her eyes. Alara meant nothing. She'd always meant nothing. The storm raged harder. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning when you were freezing to death. Alara's feet had gone numb somewhere around the first hour. Her hands soon followed. The thin dress clung to her skin, soaked through with snow and ice. Every breath burned her lungs. Her wolf had retreated deep inside, whimpering, dying along with her human half. She'd tried to find shelter, some cave, some hollow tree. But the storm was merciless, and her weakened body stumbled more than it walked. The bond severing had taken something vital from her, left her hollowed out and fragile. "This is it," she thought distantly as her knees finally gave out. "This is how I die." She'd collapsed in what might have been a clearing, or might have been anywhere. Snow was already covering her, nature reclaiming what had been cast out. The cold didn't hurt anymore. That was a bad sign, she knew. When the cold stopped hurting, it meant you were close to the end. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the moon goddess, her voice barely a breath. "Whatever I did, whatever I am, I'm sorry." The wind howled in response. Her eyes drifted closed. The pain in her chest was finally fading, replaced by a strange, peaceful numbness. Maybe death wouldn't be so bad. Maybe, on the other side, she'd find a place where she finally belonged. "Let go," her wolf whispered weakly. "It's time." Alara let herself sink into the darkness. She didn't know how long she floated in that space between life and death. But slowly, gradually, she became aware of warmth. Heat surrounded her, pressed against her sides, her back, her front. And a scent. Aged oak, winter snow, pine, and the electric charge of an approaching storm. It was powerful, ancient, utterly unlike anything she'd ever encountered. Her eyes fluttered open. She was still in the clearing, still covered in snow. But she wasn't alone. Wolves surrounded her. Massive, enormous wolves, so each one easily twice the size of even the largest alpha she'd ever seen. Their fur ranged from silver white to deep charcoal, and their eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. Blue, gold, green. Colors that shouldn't exist in nature. Elara tried to count them through her haze. 1, 2, 3. She kept going, her frozen mind struggling. 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 massive wolves had formed a circle around her body, lying so close, their fur pressed against her, sharing their impossible warmth. They'd kept her alive, protected her from the storm. How, she wondered distantly. Why? The largest wolf, silver white with eyes like blue ice, lifted its massive head. It stared at her with an intelligence that was deeply unsettling. Not animal, not human. Something older. But then it began to shift, architected narrative structure and plotted story progression. 12 seconds, I'm making good progress. I'm now transitioning into Act 2, the rescue scene. I've established the brutal rejection. Check. The physical pain. Check. Public humiliation. Check. Being cast out. Check. Parents refusing to help. Check. Near death in the wilderness. Check. Discovery by the 10 wolves. Check. Now I need to continue with the alpha leader revealing himself. We've been waiting for you. Then move into Act 3 with the prophecy revelation power unlocking. Transformation scene. I'm at roughly 2,300 words now. Need to complete Act 2. Should end around 3,000 words. Then Act 3, 2,000 words. So ending around 5,000. Act 4, 1,500, ending around 6,500. Act 5, 2,000, ending around 8,500. And Epilogue, 300, ending around 8,800. Let me continue with the transformation of the lead wolf into the protector character. Bones flowed like water, fur receding, limbs extending. In moments, a man knelt where the wolf had been. He was older than Damon, perhaps in his mid-30s, with silver-threaded dark hair and a face marked by a scar that ran from his left eyebrow to his jaw. He was built like a warrior from ancient times, all lean muscle and controlled power. And his scent, that aged oak and winter storm, crashed over her with devastating intensity. He wasn't her mate. The bond didn't spark, but the sheer authority radiating from him made her wolf stir with something close to reverence. You're alive, he said, his voice deep and rough, as if he hadn't spoken in years. Relief colored his tone. Thank the goddess. We thought we might be too late. Elara tried to respond, but her throat wouldn't work. The other wolves remained in their forms, watching, their glowing eyes fixed on her with an intensity that should have been frightening. The man reached out slowly, carefully, and brushed snow from her face with surprising gentleness. My name is Theron Stormwake. I am captain of the Shadow Guard. He gestured to the massive wolves surrounding them. We've been searching for you for 300 years. That broke through her haze. What? She croaked. Not you specifically, Theron clarified, a slight smile touching his scarred face, but the one you were always meant to become. His eyes, that impossible blue, held hers steadily. Tell me, Elara Ashwood, do you know what you are? She wanted to laugh, but it came out as a sob. Omega. Rejected. Nothing. No. The word was firm. Absolute. Now Theron shifted his position, moving closer, his warmth chasing away more of the deadly cold. You are none of those things. You never were. He glanced up at the storm, which seemed to be lessening now, as if nature itself was responding to his presence. But you're dying, and we need to move you somewhere safe before we can explain. Will you trust us? Elara stared at him, at the massive wolves who'd saved her life, at the strange, impossible situation she'd woken into. She had no reason to trust anyone, not after tonight. But something in Theron's eyes, in the way his warriors watched her with what looked like hope. Why? She whispered. Why do you care? Theron's expression softened. Because we've been waiting for you. He said it like a prayer, like a promise. And now that we've found you, we're never letting you go. He scooped her into his arms with ease, cradling her against his chest. His body heat was incredible, chasing away the last of death's grip. Two of the massive wolves moved ahead, blazing a trail through the snow. The others formed a protective circle around Theron as he carried her through the storm. Where? Elara managed to ask, her head resting against his shoulder. Somewhere safe, Theron promised. Somewhere your old pack will never find you. Somewhere you can finally learn the truth. The storm continued to rage, but within the circle of the Shadow Guard, Elara felt warm for the first time in her life. She let her eyes drift closed again, but this time she wasn't falling into death. She was falling into destiny. Elara woke to firelight and the scent of herbs. She was lying on something soft. Furs, Comanche realized, piled thick and warm. A fire crackled nearby, casting dancing shadows across stone walls. The room was small but comfortable, carved directly into what appeared to be a cliff face. Through an opening, she could see dawn breaking over a landscape of mountains she didn't recognize. You're awake. Theron's voice came from her left. He sat beside the fire, now dressed in dark leather and fur, watching her with those unsettling blue eyes. How do you feel? Elara took inventory. Her body ached, but it was the ache of recovery rather than injury. Her wolf was still there, still weak, but alive. The hollow place where her bond had been, still hurt, but differently now. Less like an open wound, more like an old scar. Confused, she admitted, pushing herself upright. As someone had changed her clothes, she now wore soft wool and leather, warm and practical. Where am I? The Northern Sanctum, Theron said. It's been our home for centuries. We're about 70 miles north of Silvercrest territory, deep in the Frost Peak Mountains, where no pack dares venture. 70 miles. In one night. How? We're faster than normal wolves. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Among other differences, he stood, moving to a small table where he poured water from a clay pitcher. He brought it to her. Drink. Then we need to talk. The water was cold and sweet, melting away the last of the frost in her throat. Elara drank gratefully, then met Theron's gaze. You said you've been searching for me for 300 years. You said I'm not an Omega. I need you to explain. I will. Theron settled onto a stool near the bed, close enough to speak quietly, but far enough to give her space. But first, I need to ask you something. When you were born, was there anything unusual about your arrival? Anything your parents might have mentioned? Strange lights, prophecies, reactions from the pack? Elara frowned, searching her memory. My mother said I was born during a lunar eclipse, that the midwife claimed my eyes glowed silver for a moment before turning gray. But Omegas are born during eclipses sometimes. It doesn't mean anything. It means everything. Theron leaned forward, his intensity radiating through the small space. "Alara, there's a prophecy, an ancient one, older than any pack currently walking these lands. It speaks of a wolf who would be born during a lunar eclipse, marked by the moon goddess herself, whose power would be so great that it had to be bound until the time was right." Her heart began to pound. "Bound?" "Your parents," Theron said gently. "Did they ever seem afraid of you? Cautious about your wolf? About your abilities? Did they discourage you from shifting, from exploring your instincts?" Alara's hands clenched in the furs. Memories flooded back. Her mother's nervous glances whenever Alara asked about her wolf. Her father's insistence that she stay small, stay quiet, stay invisible. The way they'd kept her from the pack doctor after her first shift at 13, claiming it was normal that her wolf was so weak. "They bound me," she whispered, horror and understanding dawning together. "They suppressed my wolf." "Most likely with magic," Theron confirmed. "There are witches who specialize in such things, for a price. They would have done it when you were an infant, weaving spells into your very bones to keep your true nature dormant." His eyes held sympathy. "They probably thought they were protecting you. Power like yours, it draws attention, creates enemies. Fear makes people do terrible things to their own children." "But why?" Alara's voice shook. "Why would I need protection? You're not just anything." Theron stood, pacing to the window where dawn light was spilling across the mountains. "The prophecy speaks of a matriarch, a wolf who would come when the packs had grown weak and corrupt, when alpha bloodlines cared more for power than pack bonds. She would be born low so she could rise high. She would be rejected so the binding could break. She would nearly die so she could be reborn." The words settled over Alara like a physical weight. A matriarch. "The wolf sovereign," Theron said quietly. "Above alphas, beyond their laws. The moon goddess's chosen vessel on Earth." He turned to face her. "When an alpha rejects their true mate, the bond doesn't just sever. It causes a magical backlash, especially if the bond was suppressing something. When Damon rejected you," he paused. "He didn't just break a mate bond. He shattered the magical binding your parents placed on you 22 years ago." Alara felt her wolf stir within her, not weak anymore, not dormant. The creature was waking up, stretching, testing boundaries that had suddenly disappeared. "I can feel her," Alara breathed. "My wolf, she's different." "She's finally free." Theron moved closer, so kneeling beside the bed so their eyes were level. "Alara, the Shadow Guard exists for one purpose. We were created by the moon goddess herself, 300 years ago, to wait for the matriarch's arrival, to protect her, to serve her, to help her claim what's rightfully hers." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "We've been waiting for you. And now that you're here, now that the binding is broken, it's time for you to rise." As if in response to his words, power flooded through Alara's body. Her wolf surged forward with a strength that made her gasp. Energy crackled across her skin, golden and bright. The scent of her emotions shifted, intensified. Lavender and morning dew exploded through the room, but underneath it was something new, something wild and ancient and utterly overwhelming. "Theron," she managed to gasp. "Something's happening." "Your wolf wants out," he said, standing quickly and backing toward the door. "Don't fight her. Let it happen. Your first true shift, it's going to be—" He didn't finish. The transformation took her. But it wasn't like the stories. It wasn't painful, wasn't violent. Her bones didn't snap. They flowed like water, reshaping, reforming. her spine elongated with a sensation like stretching after a long sleep. Fur erupted across her skin, silver white with hints of gold that caught the firelight. Her hands shifted to paws, her face elongating into a muzzle, and she grew. Her wolf form expanded beyond any normal size, beyond even what she'd seen of the Shadow Guard. Power radiated from her in waves that made the very air shimmer. Energy poured off her in a visible corona of golden silver light. When the transformation completed, she stood nearly as tall as Theron's human form at the shoulder. "Hello," a voice said inside her mind. Not her own, but not foreign either. Her wolf. Finally, fully present. "We are whole at last." Alara. No, they were one now, weren't they? Looked down at her massive paws, felt the incredible strength coiled in her new muscles. She turned her head, catching her reflection in a polished shield hanging on the wall. Her eyes blazed silver white, glowing with an inner light that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. Her fur shimmered like starlight, and around her neck, a marking had appeared. A silver crescent moon surrounded by stars, glowing faintly against her fur. The mark of the moon goddess. "We are Matriarch," her wolf said with satisfaction. "We are justice. We are power. We are everything they tried to suppress." Slowly, Alara lifted her head and howled. The sound shook the stone walls, rolled out across the mountains like thunder. It was a declaration, a challenge, a promise. Every wolf within 100 miles would hear it. Every alpha would feel the instinctive urge to bow. When the howl faded, Theron was on one knee, his head lowered. His voice was thick with emotion. "Welcome home, Matriarch. We have waited so long." Outside, Alara heard answering howls, the rest of the Shadow Guard celebrating her awakening. 9 massive warriors acknowledging their queen. She shifted back to human form, the transformation coming as naturally as breathing now. The clothes she wore adjusted with her, enchanted, she realized. Theron rose and pulled a cloak from a hook, draping it around her shoulders. "Ah, there's more," he said, his eyes bright. "So much more you need to learn. Your abilities, your authority, the full prophecy." He smiled, and it transformed his scarred face into something almost boyish. "But first, you should meet your guard properly. They've been dying to greet you." Alara touched the place on her collarbone where Damon's mate mark had been. It was gone now, replaced by smooth skin. The phantom ache was finally, truly gone. In its place was strength, purpose. "Theron," she said quietly, "the prophecy, what exactly does it say?" He recited it from memory, his voice taking on a formal, ritualistic tone. "When moon eclipses moon and light devours light, when the lowest falls and the highest shows his blight, the matriarch will rise from death's own door, silver-eyed and fierce, bound by chains no more. She will come when packs forget the goddess's name, when mate bonds break and alphas feel no shame. She will be rejected, cast aside, left to die. But from the ashes of that pain, she will fly. The Shadow Guard will find her in her darkest hour, and she will wake at last into her power. She is justice. She is mercy. She is rage and grace combined. The matriarch returns, and the old ways are resigned." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Alara felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from the weight of recognition. Every line described her life. Every verse predicted her path. She wasn't a mistake. She'd never been a mistake. "Come," Theron said gently, offering his hand. "Your guard awaits." Alara took his hand and let him lead her outside. The Shadow Guard knelt in the snow, with their massive forms creating a semicircle of lethal power. In the dawn light, Alara could finally see them clearly. The closest was a female with fur the color of charcoal shot through with silver, her eyes a vivid green. "I am Nyx," she said, her voice melodic. "Tracker and scout. Your eyes in the darkness." Next to her, a massive male with rust-red fur and gold eyes. "Soren, weapons master and your shield in battle." They continued down the line, each warrior introducing themselves with pride. Kyle, silver-gray fur, tactical genius. Ash, pure white, healer and herb master. Lyric, black with blue undertones, communication specialist. Ember, copper-red female, explosives and fire magic. Frost, ice-blue male, weather manipulation. Stone, earth-brown, strongest of them all. Raven, black as night, stealth and shadows. 9 warriors, the plus Theron made 10. Each one deadly, loyal, sworn by ancient magic to protect her. "Rise," Elara said, the word coming naturally despite her lack of any leadership experience. "You saved my life. You brought me home. I am the one who should be thanking you." "You are our purpose," Nyx said simply, standing with fluid grace. "For 3 centuries we've walked these mountains, waiting, searching. We felt your birth, but the binding hid you from us. We searched every pack, every territory, hoping to find some sign." Her green eyes were bright. "When your bond was rejected last night, the shockwave was like a beacon. We ran faster than we ever have, praying we'd reach you in time." "You did," Elara said softly. "You saved me when my own pack left me to die." "Your old pack," Theron corrected gently. "They are nothing to you now. But you are Shadow Guard. We are your family now." Family. The word settled into Elara's chest like a missing piece sliding into place. She looked at these 10 warriors, strangers who'd risked everything to save her, who'd waited centuries for her arrival, and felt something shift inside her. She wasn't alone. She would never be alone again. "Then teach me," she said, lifting her chin. "Teach me everything. I want to know what I can do, what I'm meant to do. I want to learn how to be the matriarch they've been waiting for." Theron's smile was fierce and proud. "It would be our honor." The days blurred into weeks. Elara threw herself into training with the intensity of someone who'd spent 22 years being told she was weak. Every morning she woke before dawn, and every night she collapsed into bed, exhausted but exhilarated. Theron taught her to shift at will, to hold her wolf form for hours without strain. Nyx showed her how to track, by scent alone, to read the wilderness like a book. Soren drilled her in combat, both as human and wolf, until her muscles ached and her instincts sharpened to razor precision. But it was her unique abilities that fascinated them all. "Try again," Ash encouraged one afternoon, as they sat in the healing chambers carved into the mountain's heart. "Feel for the injury, then push your energy toward it." Elara focused on the rabbit Nyx had accidentally wounded during a hunt, a broken leg, clean break. She placed her hands on either side of the injury and reached for that well of power inside her. It came easier now, like breathing. Golden light flowed from her palms. She felt the bone, sensed the trauma, and gently, carefully, coaxed it to heal. In moments, the rabbit's leg was whole. It hopped away, startled but healthy. "Remarkable," Ash murmured, his white fur shimmering with reflected power. "You can heal anything living. It's a gift reserved for the moon goddess's chosen." But healing wasn't her only ability. Elara could feel emotions like waves crashing against her senses. Fear, joy, anger, love. She could sense pack bonds, could see them like golden threads connecting wolves to each other. And when she spoke with authority, with intention, her commands carried weight that even alphas couldn't resist. "It's called the voice," Theron explained one evening as they sat around the fire. Matriarchs can compel obedience from any wolf of lesser power, which in your case is essentially every wolf alive. That seems, Ilara struggled for words, dangerous, wrong. I don't want to control people. It's not about control, Theron said gently. It's about justice, about stopping violence before it starts, about protecting the weak from the strong. You wouldn't use it to dominate. You'd use it to serve. That's what all of this was, Ilara was learning. Not about power for its own sake, but about responsibility, about using her strength to create something better than what existed before. She was also learning about the Shadow Guard themselves, their personalities, their histories, their hopes. Nyx had been a hunter in her mortal life before the moon goddess chose her for this eternal duty. She told stories around the fire that made everyone laugh, fierce and bright, despite the weight of centuries. Soren was quiet but steady, always the first to rise and last to sleep. He'd lost his mate before joining the Guard, and Ilara suspected he saw this mission as a way to honor that love. Kyle had been a beta once, tactical and brilliant. Ash had been a healer who'd wanted to do more. Lyric could mimic any voice, any sound, and used it to great comedic effect during meals. They became her family in truth, her pack, the found family she'd never dared hope for. And Theron. Theron was steady as stone, patient as winter, and watching her with something in his eyes that made her heart flutter in ways that had nothing to do with mate bonds. "You're staring," she told him one night, as they stood watch on the mountain's edge. "I'm observing," he corrected, a hint of amusement in his voice. "You've grown so much in just 3 weeks, Ilara. You're becoming everything the prophecy promised. I'm still learning." She gazed out over the darkened landscape, still figuring out who I am without the fear, without the binding. "You're magnificent." Theron said it simply, like a fact. "And I don't mean your power. I mean you. Your heart, your strength, the way you care about each member of your Guard." He moved closer, his warmth cutting through the night chill. "Mate bonds are sacred, but they're not the only kind of love that matters. Chosen bonds, built on respect and trust and time, those can be just as powerful." Ilara looked up at him, her heart racing. "Theron, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I know you're still healing from the rejection. I just wanted you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'm here. Not because prophecy demands it, but because I choose to be." She reached out and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. He was right. This wasn't the explosive, instant connection of a mate bond, but it was real, steady, built on weeks of trust and training and quiet moments like this. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything, for finding me, for being patient." Theron smiled and squeezed her hand. "For you, matriarch, I'd wait another 300 years." The peace shattered on a cold morning near the end of her first month with the Shadow Guard. "Tracks," Nyx announced, appearing in the training yard where Ilara was sparring with Stone. "Fresh. 2 wolves, moving fast, heading straight for the sanctum." The entire Guard went still. Theron's expression hardened. "Scouts? Or worse?" Nyx's green eyes were sharp. They smell like Silvercrest." Ilara's wolf surged to attention, hackles rising. Her old pack. Damon's pack. They'd found her. "How?" she demanded. "We're 70 miles north. How could they possibly?" "They probably didn't find us on purpose," Kyle said grimly. "But if they stumbled onto our territory, if they report back what they've seen..." He didn't need to finish. A matriarch rising from the dead would terrify every alpha in a 1,000-mile radius. "We deal with them." Theron's voice carried absolute authority. Quickly and quietly. But Alara held up a hand. No. Let them come. Everyone turned to stare at her. Theron frowned. Alara, if they report, let them report. Power thrummed through her words, making the air shimmer. Let them run back to Daemon and tell him exactly what they saw. Let him know I'm alive, so let him know what's coming. She smiled, and it wasn't kind. It's time for Silvercrest to learn what they threw away. Understanding dawned in Theron's eyes. You want to send a message. I want to send a warning. Alara shifted, her transformation flowing like water. Now, in her massive wolf form, she towered over even the Shadow Guard. Let them see me. Let them see what I've become. And then let them run home and tell their Alpha that the Omega he rejected is coming. The scouts appeared minutes later, 2 young males, probably sent to patrol the extended borders. They crested the ridge and froze, their eyes going wide with terror. 10 massive, dire wolves stood in formation, and in the center, glowing with silver-gold light, was a wolf larger than any Alpha, marked with the moon goddess's symbol, radiating power that made the very air vibrate. Alara let out a low growl that echoed across the mountains. The scouts whimpered, immediately dropping into submission. Run, she commanded, using the voice. The words bypassed their minds entirely, embedded directly into their instincts. Run back to your Alpha. Tell him what you saw. Tell him the rejected Omega is dead. But the matriarch lives, and she's coming home. The scouts scrambled backward, terror-stricken, then turned and fled down the mountain faster than Alara had ever seen wolves move. As they disappeared into the distance, Theron shifted and came to stand beside her. That was a declaration of war. No, Alara corrected, shifting back to human form. That was a declaration of judgment. There's a difference. Silvercrest won't come quietly, as Daemon will bring an army. Good. Alara's eyes blazed silver. Let him bring an army. Let him bring every wolf in his territory. It won't be enough. She turned to face her guard, her family, her chosen pack. We've trained. I've learned. I know what I can do. It's time to show the packs what happens when you reject the moon goddess's chosen. Nyx grinned, fierce and eager. About time. I was getting bored up here. The others laughed, the sound carrying confidence and anticipation. They weren't afraid. They'd been waiting 300 years for this moment. They'll come within the week, Theron predicted. Daemon won't be able to resist the challenge to his authority. He'll bring his best warriors, probably his new mate, definitely Beta Marcus. Will they attack? Ash asked, concerned. Maybe. Alara considered. Or maybe Daemon will try to negotiate first. Either way. She smiled, and this time, it held mercy alongside strength. We'll be ready. The Shadow Guard prepared for war. 6 days later, Nyx returned from scouting with news. They're here, 25 wolves, including Daemon. They're setting up a perimeter at the base of the mountain. Alara stood on the cliff's edge, watching the distant figures move through the snow. Even from here, she could smell them. Daemon's forest and embers leading the pack. Serena Nightshade's cinnamon and iron beside him. Beta Marcus's cedar and leather trying to maintain order. 25 wolves against 11. On paper, Silvercrest had the advantage. But Alara knew better. Let them come, she said quietly. We meet them in the valley below. Open ground. No ambush. So I want them to see exactly what they're facing. Theron moved to her side. You don't have to do this. We could scatter them without you risking yourself. I need to do this. Alara met his eyes. For me. For every Omega they've ever mistreated. For the moon, goddess's laws, they've forgotten. She touched his arm gently. Trust me? Always. Theron's smile was proud. Let's go remind them what power looks like. The Shadow Guard descended the mountain in formation, 10 massive, dire wolves moving like liquid death, and in their center, Illyra in her matriarch form, glowing with divine authority. They reached the valley as Daemon's pack spread out in battle formation. Illyra counted them quickly. 25 wolves, as Nyx had said, all in combat stance, hackles raised. But their confidence wavered as they saw what approached. Daemon shifted to human form, his amber eyes widening as he recognized her. Illyra? She shifted as well, standing tall in the enchanted leathers that marked her as guard. Her silver-white hair cascaded down her back, and her eyes blazed with power. The mate mark was long gone, replaced by the moon goddess's own symbol glowing faintly on her collarbone. Wrong, she said, her voice carrying across the valley with supernatural clarity. That name belongs to the broken girl you rejected. I am something else now. You should be dead, Serena hissed, shifting to human form as well. She was beautiful in a cruel way, with gold hair and sharp features. We left you to die in the storm. You tried. Illyra's smile held no warmth. The moon goddess had other plans. Daemon took a step forward, and immediately the Shadow Guard growled in unison, a sound that shook the ground. He froze, finally seeming to register the massive wolves surrounding her. What have you done? He demanded. What dark magic? No magic, Theron interrupted, shifting to human form, while his guard remained wolves. His presence radiated ancient authority. Only destiny finally fulfilled. You rejected your fated mate, Alpha Blackthorn. In doing so, you shattered the binding placed on her as a child. You freed her to become what she was always meant to be. And what is that? Beta Marcus asked carefully, his eyes darting between the giant wolves. Illyra felt power surge through her, responding to the challenge. I'm the matriarch, the moon goddess's chosen vessel, the wolf sovereign your ancestors wrote about in prophecies you've long forgotten. She took a step forward, and 25 wolves flinched back instinctively. I am the punishment for packs that have forgotten their purpose. For alphas who care more about power than pack bonds. For wolves who cast out the weak instead of protecting them. That's impossible, Serena snarled. You're an Omega. You have no power. She lunged. It was a mistake. Illyra moved with speed that defied physics, catching Serena in mid-leap. One massive hand closed around the female's throat as Illyra shifted partially, her eyes blazing silver, her voice resonating with divine authority. Kneel. The command crashed through Serena like a physical blow. The voice, backed by matriarch authority, was irresistible. Serena's knees hit the ground immediately, for her body bowing despite her clear desire to fight. You attacked your sovereign, Illyra said quietly, her grip firm but not cruel. That's treason punishable by death. She let that sink in, watching terror flood Serena's eyes. Then she released her grip and stepped back. But I am not here for vengeance. I'm here for justice. You live, Serena Nightshade, but you are banished from Silvercrest territory. Stripped of rank, you are rogue until you prove yourself worthy of pack bonds again. Serena gasped, the shame of banishment worse than death for a wolf. She scrambled backward, then fled into the wilderness, broken and alone. Illyra turned her attention to the rest of Daemon's pack. They were frozen, terrified, beginning to realize just how badly they'd miscalculated. Alpha Daemon, she said formally. You came to my territory with an army. Oh, why? Daemon's face had gone pale. Up close, she could see the regret in his eyes, the understanding of what he'd lost dawning far too late. I came to to verify what my scouts reported, to assess the threat. The threat? Ilara laughed, the sound cold. I am not a threat to you, Alpha. I am a reckoning. She gestured to the Shadow Guard. Show them. The guard shifted, not to human form, but revealing their true size and power. They grew even larger, their eyes blazing with otherworldly light. These weren't just big wolves, they were guardians forged by divine magic, each one capable of taking on 5 alphas without effort. Damon's pack began to back away, whimpering. Even Beta Marcus looked ready to bolt. These are the Shadow Guard, Ilara announced. Warriors created by the moon goddess herself 300 years ago, or to wait for my arrival. They serve the matriarch. They serve me. She let her own power flare, silver gold light washing over the valley. And now, Alpha Damon Blackthorn, you will kneel before me. Damon's eyes widened. I am an alpha. I don't kneel to... Kneel! The voice, at full power, was impossible to resist. Damon's knees hit the ground before he could stop them. Behind him, his entire pack collapsed into submission, unable to withstand the matriarch's command. Ilara walked forward slowly, each step measured, until she stood directly in front of her former mate. The bond's ghost still ached sometimes, but it was nothing compared to the power thrumming through her veins now. You rejected me, she said quietly, so only he could hear. You cast me out to die. You chose power over destiny, so ambition over the moon goddess's will. She crouched down, meeting his eyes. You made your choice, Damon. Now you live with the consequences. I was wrong, Damon gasped, and there were tears in his amber eyes. I see it now. The bond. I felt it shatter, and I've been hollow ever since. Please, Ilara, I'm begging you for mercy. My name, she interrupted, is Sovereign Ilara Stormwake, matriarch of the Northern Territories, bearer of the moon goddess's mark. She stood, towering over him, and I will grant mercy. But it is not the mercy you seek. She turned to address the entire pack, her voice carrying with supernatural clarity. Silvercrest pack, hear me. Your alpha rejected his fated mate and left her to die. In doing so, he violated sacred law and invited the goddess's wrath. You followed him into this valley seeking to challenge divine authority. The pack whimpered, pressed flat against the snow. But you are not your alpha's crimes. Ilara's voice softened slightly. I know what it's like to be powerless, to follow orders even when they're wrong. So I offer you this choice. Return to Silvercrest under new laws, or join me here in the north, where power serves justice, not ego. She listed her laws, each one resonating with authority. No wolf shall be judged by birth rank alone. Mate bonds will be sacred and never forced or rejected without cause. The weak will be protected, not preyed upon. Alphas serve their packs, not the reverse. Any who violate these laws answer to me. Silence fell over the valley. Then, one by one, wolves began to shift to human form and bow their heads in acceptance. Beta Marcus was the first. I accept your laws, matriarch, he said firmly, and I will ensure Silvercrest honors them. Others followed, young wolves, older wolves, even some of Damon's elite guard. They recognized truth when they heard it, recognized a leader worth following. Only Damon remained in wolf form, still pinned by her command. Alpha Blackthorn, Ilara said formally. You may rise. Damon shifted and stood on shaking legs. His amber eyes were red-rimmed, his scent saturated with regret and loss. Your punishment is this, Ilara declared. You remain Alpha of Silvercrest, but you answer to me now. Your territory is mine by divine right. You will implement my laws, protect the weak, and honor mate bonds as sacred. If you fail, She let her eyes blaze silver. The Shadow Guard knows where you sleep. Damon swallowed hard. I understand. And I'm sorry for what I did to you, for what I threw away. I know. Ilara felt no satisfaction in his suffering, only a distant sadness for what might have been. But sorry doesn't rebuild what you destroyed. Actions do. Prove yourself worthy of your rank, Damon. Become the alpha the moon goddess intended, not the tyrant you were becoming. She turned away from him, the final dismissal, and faced her guard. Theron watched her with pride shining in his blue eyes. We're done here, she announced. Silvercrest returns home under new rule. The North is ours, and any who seek sanctuary from unjust alphas will find it here. As Damon's pack began their retreat, tails between their legs and heads bowed in submission, Ilara felt something settle in her chest. Not closure. The bond severing would always leave a scar. But purpose. Direction. She was no longer the rejected Omega, broken and dying in the snow. She was the matriarch, sovereign, queen of the North. And this was only the beginning. 3 months later, the Northern Sanctum had transformed. Word had spread of the matriarch's rise, carried by rumors and scouting reports, and wolves who'd witnessed her power firsthand. They came in a trickle at first, rogues seeking protection, Omegas fleeing abusive packs, young wolves who'd heard the prophecy and wanted to serve something greater than themselves. The trickle became a flood. The Sanctum expanded, growing from a single complex into a sprawling city carved into the mountain itself. New dwellings sprouted like crystals, glowing with magical warmth. Training grounds echoed with the sounds of combat and laughter. So healing halls tended to the wounded and traumatized. Ilara walked through it all, still marveling at what they'd built. The Shadow Guard remained her inner circle, but now 100 other wolves had sworn to her banner. A new pack, built on merit and choice rather than birth rank. She paused in the main square, watching Nyx teach a group of young wolves advanced tracking techniques. Nearby, Ash worked in the healing ward, his gentle manner putting nervous patients at ease. Soren drilled warriors in the combat arena, his voice firm but encouraging. This was what power should be used for. Protection. Growth. Justice. Matriarch. Theron's voice came from behind her, warm and familiar. He'd taken to calling her that in public, but in private, she was still just Ilara to him. She turned, smiling. What is it? A delegation arrived, from the Eastern Territories. Their alpha wants to swear fealty. Ilara raised her eyebrows. Really? That's the 4th pack this month. Word is spreading. The old ways are dying, and wolves are looking for something better. Theron moved closer, his presence a comfort she'd grown to cherish. You're building an empire, my matriarch, whether you intended to or not. Not an empire, she corrected. A family. A real pack, where everyone matters. She looked up at him. Is that too idealistic? It's perfect. Theron reached out and tucked a strand of silver hair behind her ear, the gesture intimate and tender. You're perfect. Their relationship had deepened over the months, slowly, carefully, built on mutual respect and growing affection. It wasn't the explosive intensity of a mate bond, but it was real. Chosen, and stronger for being built rather than fated. Theron, she said softly, I need to tell you something. His blue eyes searched hers. What is it? The bond. Damon's bond. It's finally gone. Completely. I don't feel the phantom anymore. Don't dream about what might have been. She took his hand. I'm ready. If you still... He kissed her before she could finish, pulling her close with a gentleness that belied his warrior strength. When they broke apart, both were smiling. I choose you, Theron said firmly. Not because prophecy demands it, but because I love who you are. Your strength, your mercy, your fierce heart. I choose you, Elara Stormwake, matriarch of the North. Will you choose me? I already have, she whispered. Every day since you found me in the snow. They sealed the bond that night in a ceremony surrounded by the Shadow Guard and their growing pack. Not a fated mate marking, but a chosen bond. Silver threads of magic winding around their wrists, glowing with the moon goddess's blessing. It was beautiful. Perfect. Right. But as they celebrated, as wolves howled and magic filled the air, Elara felt a distant chill, a shadow on the horizon. Her wolf stirred uneasily. What is it? Theron asked quietly, feeling her tension. Elara looked toward the south, where storm clouds gathered in the distance. Something's coming. Something ancient and dark. The blood moon, Nyx said, appearing beside them. Her green eyes were troubled. It rises in 3 months. The prophecy's second verse speaks of it. Elara had read that verse, had memorized all of them. The matriarch would rise, yes, but rising was only the beginning. What came after? When the blood moon crests and shadows wake, the matriarch will face her greatest test. Ancient evils will rise, old debts to take, and only unity can pass the rest. We'll face it together, Theron said firmly, pulling her close. Whatever comes, you're not alone anymore. Elara looked around at her guard, her pack, her chosen mate, at the sanctuary they'd built from nothing, at wolves who'd found hope, where before there'd been only despair. No, she agreed. I'm not alone, and that's what will make all the difference. The celebration continued late into the night, but Elara couldn't shake the feeling that their peace was temporary. The blood moon was coming, and with it, a trial that would test everything she'd become. But for now, surrounded by love and light and the family she'd never thought she'd have, Elara allowed herself to be happy, to be grateful, to be exactly who she was meant to be. The Omega who became a queen, the rejected who became a sovereign, the nothing who became everything. And so Elara's journey came full circle, from the broken girl cast into the storm to the matriarch who rose from death itself. She'd learned that true power wasn't about dominance or rank. It was about choice, compassion, and the strength to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. She'd been rejected, yes, cast aside and left to die. But from that pain came transformation. From that darkness came light. What does it mean to be powerful? To be chosen? To matter? For Elara Stormwake, it meant being exactly who the moon goddess created her to be. And her story was far from over. What did you think of Elara's transformation? Could you feel the power in her rise? Let me know in the comments below. I love hearing your thoughts on these stories. If you enjoyed this journey from Omega to Matriarch, please hit that like button and share this with someone who loves powerful transformation stories. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because the blood moon is rising, and Elara's greatest battle is yet to come. What ancient evil awaits her? Will her new pack survive the coming storm? Find out in the next chapter. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, may the moon goddess guide your path.